Presentation is a lot about communication skills and how you communicate with your teams. The caveat to that is that you're going to have to talk to each other at one point in this presentation. So I'm going to tell you now, so you have 30 minutes to mentally prepare yourselves to interact with each other. So with that being said, what do I mean by don't take it personally? Everybody's been in that situation where you've had a conversation at work or you've left a team meeting and you find yourself thinking things like this. Well, what if I'd done this? Why does that person not like me? What did I do wrong? What happened? But the problem is we're focusing then on how we feel and how the interaction affected us personally instead of what that conversation was actually about. So it could have been something like, you know, your entire application just went down overnight last night. But because of the way the conversation was phrased, you walk away from it going, I suck at my job, I need to do better, instead of focusing on what the heck happened last night and how could we have done better? How could we as a team have prevented that? How can we solve it now if it's not already fixed? So these are the things that we tend to do just because of who we are as people. We're emotional beings. That's what we do. We react to things instinctively. So this presentation is going to be about taking a step back and how you can reorient your conversations into a more positive and constructive way. Stop taking what other people say and do personally. Focus instead on what you're about to say and do. So what makes feedback personal? So we're going to focus in on 5 elements of communication. Implication and tone. So those are what we actually say. Emphasis and inflection, how we say what we say. And our body language. So what are we doing while we're saying those things? Starting off with implication and tone. So we have this sentence here. Unfortunately, we failed since it would seem you were unable to grasp the severity of the situation. So looking at the tone of this message, and I'm not talking about the tone of voice that you use because, yeah, that's confusing and tone can mean multiple things, but it's actually the kind of words that you're using. Are you using positive words or are you using negative words? So here, unfortunately, failed, unable. These are all really negative and frame your conversations into a really negative light. Implication. You were unable. We are very clearly stating that this is that person's fault. That is the focus of this sentence. We're barely even looking at whatever the situation is. So what can we do to make this better? What about this sentence? The situation was more severe than we believed, but we did the best we could despite that and can learn from it. Looking at the tone. Best, could, can. Everything's positive. You're framing that conversation in a positive way so that people are coming into it in a positive mindset, meaning that they're actually going to be able to take something away from that and get something done. Implication. We believed, we did, we could. You're still implying things, but you're implying things in a positive way about the whole team. You're not blaming someone anymore. So though, you know, that's good, that's great. What can you actually do about these sorts of things? If somebody came up to you and said that first sentence, you're going to feel bad about it. You're going to, you know, you were unable to grasp this. You're going to feel like it's a personal attack on you. But if we take a step back for a second and you think about what the subject of that conversation should have been, you can change the conversation by using implication and tone in a positive way. So you can respond to them by saying this exact sentence. This could easily have been a conversation between 2 people, and you're actually going to be able to reorient your conversations just based on the words that you say. On top of that, for tone, I found it's actually really easy to change the tone of your entire team. So, I hate the word failure. I absolutely hate it, and it's a pet peeve of mine. So I cut it out of my vocabulary completely. Without telling my team, within 3 weeks, no one on the team said failure anymore. No one. And I wrote this talk about a year ago now, and in that time I've switched jobs. And I realized at one point I felt really bad at work again. I felt like my conversations were really crappy. And I realized everyone was saying failure again, and that I was saying it again. So I was like, all right, well, let's put this to the test and see if it actually works twice. Cut it out. Whole team stopped saying it, and no one on our team has said it in over 2 months. And that is actually, it really easily translates outside the team too, because once it's like our little group wasn't saying it, the bigger group stopped saying it, and our whole organization's approach to problems became more positive just by cutting out simple words like that. So if you work on your own vocabulary, you can actually change your whole team. So we're going to go through a little comic example of what this could look like. So who was supposed to test feature A? I was the tester for that ticket. Well, it's currently broken in production. How did you try to test it? Well, I thought through the different... Sorry, may I interrupt for a second? I was the developer for feature A. I guess so. That issue was actually caused by a change that went in an hour ago. It interacted in feature A that wasn't possible before. Well, it's incredibly damaging. It must be fixed. Make sure you're thinking about every possible scenario in future tickets. We can't let our testing be substandard. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious that this is a really negative conversation. And from the laughs, I'm hoping that means most of you haven't been in this situation, but all of these comics came from things that literally happened in my workplace long ago. So, I mean, looking at it, you know, broken, substandard, damaging, it's all negative. And at no point in this entire conversation do we even go over what the issue was. No one even talks about it. And that's what seems to happen at work too. You just get defensive and you try to protect yourself and then you have no idea what's actually going on. So can we fix it? Who was supposed to test feature A? I was the tester for that ticket. Well, it's currently broken in production. So how did you try to test it? We tested that card through automation and through manual testing. Could you give me a bit more context on what exactly is broken? Oh, sure. Well, we're seeing some users experiencing issue A. Interesting. Why don't we get the developer in this conversation as well and diagnose the root cause? Sure, let's do that. Want to come discuss this as a team? Of course. So again, this conversation ended up being a lot more positive, and they actually got something done. They're actually working on the issue now. Because instead of getting defensive about it, she was able to reorient the conversation and go, okay, this is really negative. Let's focus on what's actually at hand. Let's use more positive language. Let's imply that as a team we can fix this. And you can change your conversations. Emphasis and inflection. I don't know if anyone's seen this before, but this is one of my favorite sentences. This sentence has 7 words, and it can be interpreted 8 different ways. I didn't say you stole my money. I didn't say you stole my money. I'm not going through all of them. I didn't say you stole my money. I didn't say you stole my money. I didn't say you stole my money. 8 different ways that this sentence can be interpreted. And unless you say it without emphasis, it is not at all about what the sentence should be about. It should just be a flat out, I didn't say you stole my money. Meanwhile, if you try and emphasize different things, you're changing what the subject of that sentence is. I didn't say you stole my money. Okay, so you're saying I stole something. You're just saying it wasn't your money. You know, I didn't say you stole my money. Okay, so you're implying somebody stole your money, but I know something about it, but it wasn't me. There's all of these different ways that this can be interpreted, that this can mean. And this is actually one of those things where we tend to do it subconsciously. We emphasize things, or people emphasize different words to us, and we very rarely have that conscious tick that goes, oh, why did they emphasize that word? That's really weird. If it's really aggressive, you do, but those will be the few times that you actually think about it. We need to get better at when we are having a conversation and it's not, you know, the words that are being said, because those you can pick up on pretty quickly if that's what's really bugging you. But taking a step back and going, okay, I feel really crappy about this interaction. What just happened? And starting to think about the sentence a little bit more, your conversation with people a little bit, you know, more in depth, and saying, okay, so they have a lot of focus on words like, you did this. This is your fault. And they're focusing on those sorts of things. So what can you do about that? Use those words. Figure out what it is that they're trying to emphasize and think about why they might be doing that. Think about, okay, so they're constantly saying that. Did I do something in an interaction with this person in the past that's causing issues? There's a way that we can defend ourselves without being defensive. A lot of times where people are emphasizing things, they're using it to say, you know, you're doing this, like this is your fault, or that there's some underlying meaning that has nothing to do with the sentence. So if you can actually take that step back and realize what that underlying meaning is and start to think about why they might feel that way and what can you do to reorient the way that they feel about that situation. So another comic example, because comics are fun. Monday morning stand-up. TCK123 is now ready for testing. I will be demoing that. I can pick that up. I have a free cycle currently. Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Good little meeting so far. Hey, Liz, TCK123 is broken. Under condition X, Y happens, even though Z should. Are you sure? I didn't break that. Well, you need to fix it. Here you go, Scott. I fixed your bug. I'll look at it when I can. I'm very busy. Next morning in stand-up. TCK123 is still broken. So I'll be speaking with Liz to get that fixed. I'm working on TCK432. Apparently, I'll be fixing TCK123. Why didn't you tell me this before stand-up? Well, maybe if you came in at a reasonable time, I would. Okay, it is finally fixed. You can integrate it now. Thank you so much, Scott. Super negative. Pretty easy to see that. But the conversation started out perfectly fine until somebody used emphasis in a weird spot the first time. If you looked at that conversation without any of that emphasis, it probably would have gone perfectly well. If we just said, you know, are you sure? I didn't break that. I mean, actually, that one's pretty bad no matter what you do. But even then, it's the focus then on the response. Well, you need to fix it. Okay, well, we were working as a team up until about 30 seconds ago there. So how can we fix it? Same slides, you know, TCK123 is now ready for testing. I'll be demoing that. I can pick that up. I have free cycles. Excellent, thanks, Scott. Under condition X, Y happens even though Z should. Oh, could you show me what you mean? Sure. When I click X, Y happens. You need to fix that. Oh, I see the problem. Sure, we can fix that right away. Hey, Scott, fix that issue from earlier. Great find. Let me know if there's anything else. Easy, done. And the best part is you can use emphasis and inflection to change those conversations back. If someone wants to put the emphasis on, you know, well, it's broken, you can be like, excellent, let's fix it. And if somebody wants to be that kind of person, you can also use emphasis and inflection. Just put it in a more positive section of your conversations. Focus on the issues at hand. If you're talking about an issue and somebody's emphasizing, you broke it, great, we'll fix it. You can change those conversations by using the exact same tactics that those people are using right back at them. But it's really important that you start focusing in on those so that you don't just respond emotionally right away like we as humans were trained to do. The last one, body language. This is something that we almost never think about. Things like crossing our arms. Technically in body language theory, this is seeing as closed off. You don't want to engage. You don't want to be part of the conversation. Hilariously, I don't even know if that's valid anymore because most of us just cross our arms all the time because we don't know what to do with our hands. Apparently these want to go really slow today. Facial expressions are the next one. But it's not even worth me trying to dig into every facial expression on this screen because there are so many things that we would have to go through, from smiles to the ways people's eyes are looking to, you know, if they're actually engaged in the conversation, are they smiling but it doesn't reach their eyes, all of those things. These are things that as human beings we picked up and we've started to use to influence our conversations. But when's the last time you thought about what your body language is, or you were in a conversation, you're like, you know, I think you crossing your arms actually makes me a little uncomfortable. Never. It would actually be kind of strange if we started doing that all the time. But this is just one of those things that humans are great. You know, we evolved this really great complex language, but it has a lot of pitfalls still. And there's a lot of things that we've become blind to because it's so automatic. Body language can actually be one of the biggest things that's hurting a team, I've found. And the problem is that it's easy to say, this person's really negative in conversations, that needs to change. this person's really combative in conversations, that needs to change. It's kind of weird to go to somebody's manager and go, your employee is just really making the team uncomfortable because they refuse to make eye contact with anyone, or they're always on their laptop, or they always cross their arms, or they won't like engage in the conversations at all. Those aren't things that we've thought about and bring up. The biggest issue that I find with body language on teams is actually in team meetings. That is where I see most people are on their phones, or on their laptops, or looking away from the conversation. They're fiddling with pens, they're fiddling with markers. I'm saying all of this, I'm the one who's guilty of it, just saying, don't worry. And the other thing is even just team meetings where one team sits on one side of the table and the other team sits on the other side. You just started a fight, whether you want to accept it or not. And it is hard to break body language. It's things that, we do naturally. I realized the first time I did this talk, I used to have a really nervous tic where I would just spin this ring constantly, just all the time. Until someday someone came up to me and they're like, when you do that, it makes me feel like you're really disengaged. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I had no idea that something like that could make somebody else uncomfortable. So the biggest thing about body language and how you can use it to change your teams and change your conversations is, again, change your own. If you're presenting an open, caring, I'm engaged sort of body language to people, they tend to do the same back to you, which is awesome when you can see it in practice. And the biggest thing is in team meetings, sit in the middle of the other team. Freaks them out. A lot. But it changes your meetings. We went from having multiple meetings, multiple long-winded meetings where nobody could agree on anything, to one day I just sat in the middle of the other team and I waited to see what happened. And all of a sudden, people couldn't just, we're all on one side, we're against you, because they'd look beside them and there was me and they were like, oh, okay, well, they're not on my side. Maybe we can find a compromise so that I feel less uncomfortable sitting beside this person. So on that note, guess what the comic's going to be about? So, a nice fun meeting room in some pretty city. So we're hoping we could get some input on feature B since it will also have an impact on your team. Okay, what exactly are you going to be changing? Glad you asked, Paul. The change will allow your product B, to consume product A more easily through an API. And do you believe your team is capable of making the necessary changes? Text conversation going on at the side. Do they really think they can do this without our help? Right? They're totally going to make us do it for them. Haha, so true. At least Tom is calling them out on it. We do believe we can make the changes with minimal interruptions. We have a prototype ready if you'd like to see. Send it to me. I'll look at it later today. And send my feedback on what needs to be changed. We have the prototype ready right now if you'll look towards the screen. We have another meeting to get to. We'll review it and let you know. Oh, okay. Thanks. So as much as, the conversation's happening, there's a lot of things that you can look at. I mean, people have their phones out. How about that guy's face? It's not exactly an open and inviting way to look at somebody. Down here, these two, pretty snarky expressions. But if you look at the other team, some smiles, actually trying to engage. So let's fix it. Hey teams, so before we get started, could we put away all of our electronics to make sure we're focused and can get through this quickly? This will anger your teams. It's kind of fun. So we were hoping we could get some input on feature B since it will also have an impact on your team. Oh, how so? What do you need us to do? Glad you asked, Paul. We just have a few questions and that the team about the functionality, there's nothing we need you to do. All right, well, let's hear it then. Sure, so if you'll look on the screen, the first thing, I don't know if anybody's able to catch it between two very quickly moving comic strips, but the teams are sitting mixed. And they made them put their laptops and their phones away, which means they weren't distracted, which means everybody in the group was able to be engaged in the conversation. We all work in tech, people don't want to put their laptops away, people need their phones to take notes, yada, 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 yada. look for meetings where that's not true. Because there are many meetings where you maybe need one laptop that is showing things on the screen. Sprint planning meetings, you don't all need your laptops out. Weirdly, for the way my team does retros, we all need our laptops out, but we just look at each other as soon as that part's over and we're like, close your laptops. Because we found people weren't engaged because they had their laptops in front of them. Oh, the code's right there. I could just keep working right now. Oh, but if I just do this really one quick little thing, it'll be fine. And with that mentality, you end up not engaging in these meetings, and then they become long-winded. And then you hear everybody complain about how much they hate meetings over and over and over again, despite the fact that they won't engage in them. So putting it all together, it's almost never one thing that makes us take something personally. It's a combination of many things. You saw all of those comic strips. Were any of them only the one thing that I was trying to talk about? No. Even me reading them, I couldn't stop using emphasis or inflection or implication or body language while I was up here. Because you're human beings. It'd be really weird if you were just having this conversation, but you were the problem. It'd be a really weird conversation to have with somebody. Be a little concerned. The problem is, it's a lot of these things that happen at once. Okay, Bailey, so it's all these things happening at once. How the heck am I actually supposed to address it then? Pick one thing at a time, please. I had somebody come up to me once and go, okay, so I'm going to cut the word failure out. I'm going to start sitting on my hands so I don't twiddle with them all the time, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And I was like, please don't. You'll scare your team. You'll scare every person you try to have an interaction with. But focus on one thing at a time. Do it incrementally. This whole talk came out of, I found myself taking things personally at work constantly. So I started using these tactics. And I started off with implication and tone because it was really easy to notice those. And I started to think about what people were implying, and then I found a way to change that, reorient their thinking around me or the issue or whatever it might have been. Okay, cool. Implication was getting cut out. Hate the word failure. Cut the word failure out. That happened really fast. And then it was things like body language. It was me realizing that I was on my phone all the time in meetings, and then I was leaving them going, I was useless. I didn't get anything out of that. Well, yeah, how could I? I wasn't paying attention to it. So it was things like changing my own. And then, once you get a couple people on the team to put their laptops away, the 3 people left with their laptops out are kind of looking around self-consciously like, oh, okay, put that away now. And it's doing things like that and slowly influencing your team to make changes. Don't try and do it all at once. Don't try and make your whole team change overnight because it'll never work. But if you change your own behavior and you find a couple of people in your circle that you can get them to start changing their behavior by you influencing them, it's crazy how fast it can spread across an org. Trust me, I've now done it twice. I thought I was crazy the first time. Definitely thought I was crazy the second time when it worked again. And now I'm going to make everybody really uncomfortable. It's a really big room. I'm sure you can find a group. Split into groups of 2 to 3 people. Have one person using all those negative techniques that I talked about. Somebody use really bad emphasis. Somebody imply some horrible things. Use some really bad body language. There's scenarios that you can, work with. I have more scenarios if you somehow run out of them. This presentation used to be a 2-hour workshop. Trust me, I have many. But try these out, and then have one person or the other 2 people in the team work on changing that discussion. Use the same tactics. Try to identify what the actual tactic that the person being negative was using. See if you can identify it. See if you can say, okay, so you were implying this. I should try and do this in response to make a positive conversation. I have seen some hilarious examples of negative body language, a scenario that's not up here, but if you want to try it out, be interviewing one of the other people. Super fun. Use negative body language there as the interviewee. It's a good time. But yeah, split off, try it out. I'll walk around in case anybody's being super shy still. And I don't know if you can tell, but I will make people talk. Do it, Aaron.
wants to be the negative.
It is a bit harder. I do it for fun too. What should I about the baseball
All right, you guys have been doing this for a little bit now. Don't worry, you're still going to get to talk to each other. I want you to have the same conversations, but only use positive tactics. And I want you to afterwards let me know if you find that those went better or worse. Did some people already do both? Are we good? Yeah. I'm just going to skip past it then. We're good. So the one thing that I really want to focus on is even if someone makes it personal, it's up to you whether or not you take it personally. Look at that emphasis. You. But this is the entire point. The thing is, we all have to work with other people. We all have to work on teams. And we cannot be going home every day feeling crappy and feeling negative and feeling worn out by the people on our teams. And it's really easy to get in the mindset of, that person is really crappy to work with. I can't do anything. I'm good. I've done everything I need to do. We kind of tend to have that mentality because if you just say, I'm going to influence how the rest of my team acts. Good luck. But it's actually a lot easier than we think it is. It is really, especially I find in tech teams, we interact with each other so much and so to such a high degree that we kind of do that human behavior thing where you start to mimic the people around you. So if you're being really positive and you're making sure that your conversations are constructive and objective and all of these things, it will bleed out into the teams. I was just having a conversation too. What if you have one person on your team that's just really, really negative? For one, whenever I've had that experience on a team, the easiest thing to do is actually to stop trying to influence the whole team around them and work with them one-on-one. So there was a talk today or yesterday about change agents. It's the same kind of thing. If you can find one or two champions to do this with you, and you work with them one-on-one, and you can start to influence them a lot easier if you're having one-on-one conversations than just in group meetings. But if you can make that person feel like you're on their side, like you do listen to them, you hear them, you want them to be part of the team, they'll start to kind of engage more with the team. They'll start to feel like they're part of that group. But just starting it out from a perspective of the whole team's going to get better, it keeps those people who already feel siloed very siloed. If you can work with them one-on-one and say, no, here, come on, let's talk about this. Go out for coffee with them, things like that, and they can start to feel like they're part of your little team. You can make them part of the bigger team a lot easier. Caveat, there are some people who will never change. Which I have to say it because no matter what you do, there will be people that will not change. You can try everything under the sun, you can try all of these techniques, you can try hypnotizing them, it will not matter. They are who they are. The important thing though is if you're using these techniques, and especially if you're seeing the rest of your team change in a positive way, it starts to impact you a lot less. That one negative person, you just start to almost not care because you're like, I've done everything I could. I'm still doing everything I can. The team is still doing everything that they can. The way that that person acts is a reflection of them, not you. But it's crazy how much your own perception and mentality around it will change because you've started to try to make positive influences. When you're not doing that, sometimes the reason that we get so angry is that we feel guilty because we know that maybe we're contributing to the problem. The last thing that I will say as well, nobody will ever be perfect at this. I have horrible days and I revert back and I am the one saying all of the negative things. It happens. But because our team culture has changed so much towards a more positive mentality, that when I get like that, my team just turns around and goes, you feeling okay? Did something happen? Do you need our help? Because this isn't you. Because that's now not the norm anymore. And it's actually meant that we have a very supportive team because our new normal is positive and it's, a healthy working relationship. So when people have bad days, we can actually just help each other through them. So that's it. Technically we're at time, but